Hello everyone, and welcome to the Schoolbox version 15.6 webinar walkthrough. Today we're going to be going over the features that the 15.6 release has included. Just a quick walkthrough. I mean, this release is a very short release and it wasn't a major release as per usual. We did this over the Christmas break, out of step with our normal release cycle, but we wanted to make sure you had the features that you needed to start off the new year and things that we'd committed to earlier that weren't able to be met because of the foundation update to the interface, the fully responsive interface that we created for version 15.5 that meant that some of this feature were missed. So this is a little quick update in between our normal release cycle just to get you a few new features. So today will hopefully be a quick session and we'll go quickly through all of those features that have been made available. Just to start off with, I don't think I got the Q&A system working in this this webinar, unfortunately, but if you post questions in the chat, I believe I can get access to the chat. So I'll go over the chat for the video when we've completed the session, and we can have a look at the questions in there if you have any at the end of the session. But otherwise, feel free to chat amongst the help.schoolbox.com.au website that most of you now have access to. That's a great place to come and ask your questions, and we've got all our teachers in there and they can get back to you with the responses for any questions you might have. Today I'm going to go through the 15.6 features, and the release includes the following major features that I'm going to go over today. So we've got the new Rubrics Rebuilt, we've got a new resource booking availability report, we have the box and whisker graph being added to the student grade card. We have the new editor that's throughout the entire system. So there's been an update to that. So we're going to spend a bit of time looking at that new editor. And then finally, the user provisioning system. Now, for any existing customers, most of you already have a synchronization system. So the user provisioning system probably won't affect you too much. But for those new customers that are coming on board, and for old customers that want to take control of their own synchronization, the user provisioning system allows you to build your own account provisioning system within Schoolbox, and I'll talk a bit about how that would work. Not going into too much detail today, it's not a how-to, but it certainly will touch on what the idea is behind the system and how you would use it. So let's get straight into it. So let's go straight now to my standard Schoolbox login. Now, typically for these walkthroughs, I normally start with the admin user functionality. So I'm just going to log in as an admin and go straight into the admin system and start there for the walkthrough. Two new buttons have appeared in this version update. So we now have the user provisioning system and the import. The user provisioning system is designed to allow you to create new accounts within Schoolbox based on rules that you build, and those rules are then executed by going through all of your student management system data and adding the users based on those rules. So let's just have a quick look at how this system works and how it functions. Firstly, as I mentioned, this does require that you have a student management system connected to Schoolbox. It does require that you have some student management system. So you'll need to have at least some student system. So you've lost my screen, I see. So I'll just make sure you can see my screen again. There we go. Helps if you can see my screen, obviously. So looking at the screen now, we can actually see what I'm talking about. Within the user provisioning system, we have the student, parent, staff account types. Each of these corresponds to a set of data coming from your student management system. So whether that be Synergetic, TAS, Human Edge, all of those systems we can potentially connect to will be able to populate data into the user provisioning system. We do that simply by requesting all of the students, all the current students, all the current parents, and all the current staff from those systems. Under the Student tab, we are designing rules specifically for the purpose of adding students to the system. Now, the way this works is we have a series of rules, and we can add as many rules as we want. So we can add new rules, we can add existing rules, or we can delete rules. Within that rule, we have conditions and effects. So to start with, a condition defines a condition with which this rule will execute. So in this case, I've created a condition. We have year level matches 7. So this rule here will only execute when a student from the student management system comes through that has a year level matching year 7. On that rule, we can then create an effect. So in this case, the effect is we set the role to be equal to senior students. So here we can define the type, the value within Schoolbox, and what we want to set that value to. You can also apply a role for an effect on every person. So if you had no condition here, if I deleted this condition, this rule would then apply to all students, and all students would be placed in the role of senior students. Beyond that, we also have the ability to create tokens and filters. What these allow you to do is to manipulate the data that is coming from the SIS and alter that data in some way using a token system. Typical example of this is perhaps you have usernames and you want to modify them. Maybe you want to make them lowercase, or maybe you want to append some extra information onto the end of the username, the domain, or something like that. All of that can be done using these tokens, and you can adjust the values that are taken from the SIS and then manipulate them before outputting them into Schoolbox. So there's a lot of different functionality that you can do. The mapping feature here, above and beyond the ability to set something to equal, you can map something. So this is where we can actually take, for example, year 7 and select that to be senior students. And then we might set year 3 and set that to junior students. So here we've created a map that maps 7 to senior students. So this is the role mapping to that value. Okay. Now, obviously, there's a lot more detail to this, and I'm not going to go through all of that today. If you need help setting this up, let us know. Our support guys can run you through exactly how you might configure this for your particular implementation. But just to give you an idea of how it functions and how it works, and that it's available if you need it. The rules, of course, are executed in order, one by one. And finally, once you've completed and you've got your system all set up, you can run this system. So once you've got all the roles set up, you can run it and view logs of all the runs that you've done. When you do a run, you can choose to do the run either as a dry run by clicking this button here. And that will actually cause the system to do a dry run. Once it's complete, you'll be notified through the logs, and you'll be able to view exactly what happened with that run. Just going back a step now to the admin system, there was a second button here, the import button, right next to the user provisioning system. The import button functions as an alternative to having a SIS. Now, typically, as most of you would be aware, Schoolbox does live integrations directly into the SIS, avoiding any duplication of data or issues with caching of data, things like that. However, it's come about that we're not always able to create a connector, a live connection into your SIS. You may, for example, be running a FileMaker database, or you might be using CSVs for a lot of this data. Or you might be using several disparate systems that aren't all in one system, thus preventing us from creating a connector. So in those cases, we've developed an importer that allows you to import your standard SIS data directly into Schoolbox and make that available for Schoolbox to access. So that's your timetable, your enrolment information, and all the information on your user body in the school. So those are simple CSV imports. They allow you to import information. They provide a template here as per usual. You'll be able to see the format required with that template and see any options that you can do. Just as a note, you will find that our past import functions in the users area have now been updated. The add user and remove user features have now been updated to use this single import feature. The reason we did that was that this import is a fairly more sophisticated than your standard, the old importer, so this sort of replaces it. The benefits of this is it can delete and add in the one. It also has control over all fields within the system, and you can turn fields on and off. So if you don't want to change a certain field, just don't include it in your template, and the system will dynamically adapt to the fact that you've only provided it with a set amount of data. You only need to really provide it with a Schoolbox user ID, a username, or an external ID. Any one of those identifiers is enough for you to change one particular value. So you could delete users on any of those, or you could update their usernames with any of that data. So just be aware that that's now our new importing process for users in general. Okay, let's now have a look at the system from a teacher's perspective. So first off the rank, I'm going to start with some of the easy ones. So the new in the resource booking system, for those that have the resource booking system, has been updated to now include a new view that gives us oversight over the availability of resources within an old category, within your entire categories. For my resource booking system, I've clicked on meeting rooms, and I have a series of meeting rooms here. I've got the boardroom, I've got meeting room, and obviously previously I could click into these and see their availability, see when I could book them, and see that there was bookings and when they were in each of those resources. However, many of you got back to us and said, well, actually, we want to find the best meeting room for the time that we want. So we need a view that shows us all of these resources and the calendars for all of them in one. So clicking on this button up here in the top right-hand corner, so this is just on the category page on meeting rooms. There's a top button up here, looks like a calendar. Click on that, and that will provide me with the calendar and availability calendar for this particular category. So now I can see all of the resources that are in that category, so all the meeting spaces that are available throughout my school and the bookings that are in there. So I can find exactly which rooms are available for me at the time that I want. So this should give you a complete overview of what's available in that particular category of items. So you might want to think about grouping your categories together. So for like resources, that there might be several of a certain type, you group them together, and then this report will automatically show you the availability across that group of items. Okay, so next let's have a look at the new editor. Okay, so on one of my pages, let's just go to Science Unit 2. The new editor, as you're aware, the editor is available in a range of different places, from news articles through to text boxes, quizzes, assessments. All of these features use the same editor. So when we updated the editor, it's updated the editor for all of those systems. I'm just going to use it in the news system today. So I go to post a new news article, and we can immediately see the new editor that is available here. Now we've tried to maintain, I guess, the same features and functionality of the old editor, putting the buttons in roughly the same place. But the first thing you'll know, it doesn't collapse anymore. It actually shows you all of the features on approach. Having a look at these features, going across the bold, italics, underline, pretty standard stuff. Nothing special there. The ability to link to resources. These two buttons here, Embed Resource and Iframe, are completely new features. So I'm just going to go through those today. We've also got a new table inserter, which is much easier to use and much quicker to use. I just select how many columns and how many rows I want for my table, and I can start editing that table immediately. If you want to alter the settings of that table, you simply right-click on the table, and there's table properties, the ability to insert and adjust that column. You'll also note when I'm editing this, there's a new blue line that appears just above this table. Now, previously, some of you would have struggled trying to get the cursor to go in above that table and to put some text above that table. This blue line gives you the ability to insert a paragraph above the table. So just clicking on the button over here on the right will add a new paragraph and allow me to start typing above this table. Further along, we now have the ability to embed emoticons. I know everyone loves emoticons, so I'll chuck a few of those in my content here. You can embed those throughout the system wherever you see the editor. The symbol editor, of course, and then finally, probably the most asked for feature among scientists and mathematicians, the ability to insert equations. Now, previously, Schoolbox always had the ability to do equations, but it was quite undiscoverable. You had to know LaTeX notation, and you had to be able to create those formulas yourself. Now, we obviously heard the feedback that people wanted a point-and-click version, so what we've done is we've added this point-and-click ability to build LaTeX notation. So we can insert the LaTeX notation for these values, and it will build the entire equation for me. Oops, that's invalid. So I can just keep putting values into this, and it will build that equation for me. So plenty of options there. Everything from the derivatives all the way up to matrices and everything in between. So there's quite a lot of options there. Feel free to try that out. That should be ready to go now. Now, I mentioned before this embed resource button. So I'm just going to go through how this works and what it does. Embed resource works to embed images, video, and audio. So it has the ability to actually take a resource, a URL, and embed that into the system, obviously. But more importantly, it has the ability to click Browse and then access the standard Schoolbox file picker. Now, if you've used this before, you know it can accept files, so you can drop a file in there, but you can also pick files that have already been uploaded into Schoolbox. So I can browse into houses here, select an image from here, and that image will be embedded into the system. Okay, so you've got control over the width, the height, but also this tick box here for width will automatically make that image responsive. Okay. So by pressing full width, the image will automatically fill the whole box. If I want that smaller, of course, I can, of course, adjust the sizes, take the full width off, and make that perhaps 300. Oops, I should constrain that. And it's much smaller now. Didn't constrain it properly, but you can see there you can adjust the size. One of the most often asked for features with the embed resource was the ability to embed not just images, but also videos. So now the embedder also allows me to select videos that have been uploaded into the system, or I can upload my own videos directly into the text box. So if there's a video in the system, I can actually select that video and embed it into my particular document. Now in this case, it's actually an audio, so I can select the audio. It'll look like this in the preview, just showing you that it's going to be an audio. I click Insert, and that, when I press Save, will automatically turn into a playable editor, so I'll be able to play that audio back. The video works much the same way in that you can embed in video. With the third button here, the iframe button allows you to actually embed an iframe. So if you've got a third-party website you want to embed, you can do that using this embed iframe. Not something that a lot of people would use, but that it is possible to embed iframes using this tool. Now finally, probably one of the most exciting parts of the new editor is its ability to take links and turn them into content. So what I mean by that is that if you've got a link to, say, a YouTube video or to a website, maybe a news article that you want to publish, you can just post that link directly into the editor and it will automatically convert that into a new video. So let's just go to YouTube for a quick second and grab ourselves a new video here. We'll get David Bowie. And do you remember the old way of, I better pause that. The old way of embedding videos, we actually had to open up an embed media thing. These days, we just click paste into the editor and it will automatically turn that into the video for there and embed that into our editor. So if we create that news now, we've now got our video embedded. It's automatically resized and dynamic. It's going to be fully responsive. We've got our audio that we inserted up the top. We have our table, and then we have our video embedded into there as well. Okay, so the new editor is quite powerful. That technology to actually convert those links will work on thousands and thousands of different sites. So we were using it the other day, for example, to convert articles from The Age. So if we went to The Age website and there was an article we wanted to grab, we can copy that link to that article and just posting that into my editor here will automatically convert that to the headline. And when I click Modify News, we'll actually see that the whole article's been converted into a card that is visible. So it's a much prettier approach to presenting links to content. So a range of different content, not just videos and audio, but Twitter, all sorts of things will be converted into quite an attractive card like that. So feel free to experiment with embedding content and trying out that feature and having it update your content automatically and improve the quality of those links within your editable regions. Okay, next up is rubrics. So moving along to actually creating a new rubric article. I'm just going to remove this off my page. And looking at the due work component here, because this is where rubrics really are part and parcel. Having said that, I mean, obviously most schools these days are moving towards using the course builder and they'd be building their rubrics within their courses and leveraging that functionality. But as we all know, courses just wrap up due work. So I'm just going to look at it from the due work perspective today. On my due work item here, I have a brand new article. Nothing's much changed about this. The new editor, obviously, in the article here. We move down. Now, the first change is that you'll now note that rubrics no longer exist in the types. Rubrics are now independent of the marking system that you will use. So you can return a mark of a percentage, a letter grade, a total mark, or no mark at all, and still use a rubric. Now I'm going to use a percentage just as a simple example, but you can use any system you want. I'm then going to tick on, yes, I want to mark against a rubric. And I can also turn mark per capability on. Mark per capability allows me to mark and return a sub mark for each capability that's included in my rubric. So you'll see that we've changed our terminology slightly within rubrics. We used to call capabilities groups, criteria groups, and then indicators criteria. That's now changed to capabilities and indicators. We start by adding a capability, so that might be written language, and that will automatically create that new capability. I'm then going to create a new indicator. That might be grammar. And I'm going to create 2 of those actually. I'm going to create spelling as well. Now you'll notice as I create these, it's automatically building this. So no longer do you have to go off to a secondary screen to create your criteria. You can build them in line as you're building the rubric. So you can build the entire rubric from this screen. So no more switching between the 2 systems and getting confused about what you're looking at. You can build it all from the one location. You'll also note that there's little arrows up and down. It allows me to actually change the sequence. So if it's more important that one goes before the other, that can be adjusted within the system. Next, you'll notice across the top is the ability to create levels. Now, I can put these in any order that I want. So I can start with outstanding, good, and then poor. And those levels go across the entire rubric to indicate at what level that performance is. So they give an overall understanding of where in the spectrum that particular criteria and descriptor sits within. So then we click into the actual descriptor and we can start adding a descriptor in. So we might go with excellent, no issues, some spelling mistakes, hasn't been checked at all. And now when we come to the point section of those descriptors, we can see we can actually leave these blank if we choose. So no longer do we require the points to be included or require them to be in any specific order. You can do whatever you like here. So in this case, I'm going to give 2.5 and then 1 and then 0. Now that's up to you how you allocate those points, but of course it's completely optional. Now I'm going to do excellent grammar, and then I'm going to do could be better. Now I've left this one in the middle blank. Now I can optionally not include a descriptor. So now we have the ability for some particular criteria. You might not have a descriptor for every level, and that's fine. That's perfectly acceptable as well. So there's my quick and dirty rubric. It's just got the very basics, but just indicating to you the types of things that we can actually do now with this new rubric builder. Of course, if you wanted to change the sequence, you can of course alter that and adjust around so you go from poor, good, outstanding, or whichever way you choose, you can set up that sequence. Once we're finished, we can of course save that, and that rubric is now fully built and available for the students to start looking at and viewing as part of that due work assessment. Just as a note here, I can import a rubric now. So if there's a great rubric that I built on another assessment and I want to reuse that rubric, I can download that rubric from that assessment. It'll come down as a CSV, and then I can re-upload it here to automatically populate this rubric completely and build it from scratch, just from a CSV. Also, if I wanted to build the whole thing in a CSV from scratch and I knew the format, I could also do that. So if you had your rubrics already defined within a spreadsheet, you could upload them directly using this upload tool here. Okay. So just looking now on, once I've created that assessment, I'll actually have a look at the students and marking that assessment. So you can see here, this is a percentage graded assessment. Now we know that there's a rubric as well, but we can just use the percentage. So if we wanted to just mark them with percentages, we could do that. But I'm actually going to go in a bit further and actually mark the rubric first. So we can complete the rubric. And as I fill in the rubric, it's actually going to auto-populate that grade. So because I've given point values to this rubric, it's automatically calculated. This student's got all outstanding, so that's 100%, and that makes the grade 100% as well. Now I can obviously adjust that and do any version. And I might say, well, actually, I think that they done a bit better than 66%, so there's 70% for them. So you can adjust the grade and independently the rubric mark as well. So you can have the two separate if you wish. So as a teacher, you might want to adjust that final grade, especially if it's a letter grade or something like that that has no relevance. You might use the rubric to sort of calculate and suggest a grade, but then you've always got the ability to overwrite that grade at the last step as well. So same as usual, just save and continue, and we go through the students marking those rubrics for them. You'll note when I'm marking this rubric that this blank tile here that we left blank on purpose is obviously not selectable, so pretty straightforward there. We can't actually use that criteria for marking purposes. If you had, for example, and we've seen quite a lot of this, additional indicators here such as pastoral notes or performance or other indicators, those can contribute to the rubric result without actually having any point score. So you can choose to have some indicators that use points and some that don't. And of course, the ones that don't just won't have any effect on the final point value. So you can use a mix and match of perhaps formative plus actual other results as well included in that. We have a few schools that are using rubrics for pastoral feedback as well. So this will allow that type of functionality. So that about sums up my quick overview of the rubrics. I think I've now covered pretty much everything that I was going to cover today. I'm just going to have a quick look to see if there's any questions in the chat. If anyone's got any other questions, feel free to post them. I'm going to have a look to see if I can find the chat. Just give me a moment while I work all of that out, and I'll get to your questions in just a moment. Okay, how's everyone gone finding the chat? I'm all alone on the chat. Looks like it hasn't worked out as I expected. All right then. If we've got no further questions and no one's worked out how to get into the chat, I guess I'll just have to wrap up the session. But thank you everyone for coming along. I hope you all got something out of the quick session today. We obviously look forward to your feedback on 15.6, and it's already had great uptake. We've already got half of our schools almost running 15.6 already. So you're already using the system, so that's great news. And keep the feedback coming, and we look to improve it over the next few months. And we'll be releasing version 16 very shortly in April. May will be the version 16 release, so it's a very short time frame to the next release as well. So we'll keep on schedule with our standard 16 release. But we just wanted to make sure that you had these new features for 15.6, the new editor, the rubrics, and the user provisioning system were very important. So we hope you enjoy those features, and look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.